All right, so now we're going to be discussing absolute value equations. So some of you might know what absolute value is, and you always say something like, oh, I'm the positive. Okay, well, that's not what that means. Absolute value means it's the distance a value is from 0. So how far away from 0 it is. So the absolute value is equal to 4. It's saying the distance is 4 away. So this is 0. So what values are 4 away? Well, over here, this is 4 away from 0, but also this way is 4 away from 0. So when we're doing an absolute value equation, there's two possibilities. X could be 4 or X could be negative 4. So there's two answers, in essence. So how about this one? The absolute value of X is 6. That means the distance from 0 is 6. Well, which values are 6 away? Well, 6 is 6 away, but so is negative 6, because this is your distance, right? Distance is always positive, and that's why we always think of absolute value as positive. But you have to start thinking of it as distance from 0. So how about this one? So this is where it starts getting a little iffy. X plus 1 is 7 away. So that means that X plus 1 could be at 7, or X plus 1 could be at negative 7 here. But that's not the answer. It's X plus 1. So we've moved it a little. So I have to solve these equations to find out what it would be. So this is 6, and this is negative 8. So if I put 6 in here, oops, let's just do this. If I put 6 right here, 6 plus 1 is 7. And then if I put negative 8 in there, negative 8 plus 1 is negative 7, but that's still negative 7. That's still 7 away from 0. So that's what you have to get used to. That whenever you have an absolute value, that's these little lines here, there's always going to be two answers. So the basic idea is if I have an absolute value, ooh, look at that, cool. The absolute value is equal to a number. We have to say, okay, well, that absolute value could be equal to 15, but what is inside the absolute value could also be equal to negative 15. And we have to figure out the two possibilities for X. So that's really all there is to it. Anything that's outside the absolute value gets changed, and we solve. So I add 3, and I hope I get things working. So X could be 3, and 6X equals negative 12. So X is negative 2. So the two possibilities here are 3 and negative 2 to plug in for X. So what's going on here? Well, the absolute value isn't by itself, so we do need to isolate the absolute value. And I'm going to have steps there in a second. So if you look down your paper, I'm sure you can see the steps. We want to isolate the absolute value, meaning, okay, if you look, the equal sign kind of divides it into two rooms. The absolute value here has to be by itself. It's not, it's got a 4. So I got to get rid of that 4 before I can do my absolute value shtick. So 2x minus 7 is equal to 11. Now I can do my two equations where the distance is 11. The distance is it could be at 11 or at negative 11. And then we solve. So X could be 9. What is that, 4? It's negative 4, and so X could be negative 2. So two possibilities, X could be 9 or negative 2. So isolate the absolute value is the most important thing. Okay, that's what you have to do first. And then you create two equations. So remember, this is what we just did when we subtracted 4. On the last problem, we subtracted 4 first. Okay, now after that, we have to create two equations. The first equation is the same, but leave off the absolute values. Get rid of those. We don't need those anymore. Okay? And then the second equation is everything outside the absolute value changes. Okay, so inside the absolute value stays the same, outside the absolute value changes. Okay, and then solve each equation, done. So if we have something here, all right, well I have a 3 attached to this 2x minus 4, so I simply divide by 3. Those cancel out. It doesn't go inside the absolute value or anything. Okay, so we get 2x minus 4 equals 2. So the two possibilities, the absolute value, the two possibilities is 2x minus 4 equals 2. And notice 2x minus 4 is exactly the same here, here, and here. Always the same. Okay, what changes is this 2 is outside. So that changes its sign. And then we just solve. So 2x equals 2. X is 1. And 2x, oh, that's supposed to be, sorry, this was supposed to be a 6. Let's do this. 6, and so this is 3, this is the 2. You shouldn't get the same numbers, but it happens sometimes. So x equals 1 and 3. Finally, we have something like this. We have an x here. It's on the same side with the absolute value, so I add x. So the absolute value of 2x minus 7 equals x plus 5. So this is where we have more than one term. So the first absolute value equation is exactly the same, just without the lines. And the second one, everything outside changes. So the x changes to a negative x, and the 5 changes to a negative 5. And then we solve both of these equations. So subtract x. I'm just doing it in one step. So x equals 12. And then add x, add 7, and I get 3x equals 2. Well, that's annoying. Divide by 3, and x is 2/3. So it's a fraction, it's not a big deal. And that's it. So hopefully you understand how to solve absolute value equations.